December 23, 2020. A black Lamborghini Urus moved through Cambuslang late at night after arriving back from Dubai only hours earlier on a first-class Emirates flight. Inside were David Stephen and Shaun Brown, two Scottish businessmen who had spent months communicating through encrypted EncroChat devices they believed could never be accessed by law enforcement. By that stage, investigators were already watching closely. Surveillance teams followed the vehicle as it pulled into a petrol station, then officers moved in. Phones were seized, vehicles were searched, and an investigation tied to one of Europe's largest organized crime operations was beginning to close around them. What authorities would later present in court was not a small-scale drug operation, but an alleged cocaine trafficking network involving more than 100 kilograms of cocaine and millions of pounds in criminal proceeds. Thousands of encrypted messages recovered from EncroChat devices appeared to document deliveries, collections, adulteration, and financial discussions in extraordinary detail. What made the case stand out was the public image surrounding the men at its center. They were not operating from anonymity. Their company sponsored football teams in Scotland, they traveled openly, displayed wealth online, and presented themselves as successful businessmen building a legitimate future. This is the story of David Stephen and Shaun Brown, the rise of an alleged multi-million-pound cocaine operation, the encrypted network that investigators quietly infiltrated, and the investigation that brought both men into a Glasgow courtroom facing serious organized crime charges. This is Crimelines UK, real stories, real crimes. If true crime is your thing, if you want more chilling stories like this one, real criminals, real investigations, real consequences, then hit that subscribe button. Now, let's go back to where it all began. Long before David Stephen and Shaun Brown appeared in a Glasgow courtroom, they had already built a public identity that, to many people in Scotland, looked entirely legitimate. To understand why the case later attracted so much attention, it is important to understand the environment they operated within. For years, Scotland has faced a significant cocaine trafficking problem, particularly across Glasgow and parts of Lanarkshire. The drug trade evolved steadily through the 2000s and 2010s, becoming increasingly profitable and increasingly organized. Cocaine moved through layered distribution networks involving suppliers, couriers, local distributors, debt collectors, and intermediaries operating across different towns and cities. In areas surrounding Glasgow, organized crime groups adapted to changing methods of communication and surveillance. Encrypted communication platforms began playing a larger role in organized trafficking, allowing criminal groups to coordinate activity with greater confidence and less direct exposure. At the same time, organized crime in Scotland was no longer always associated with the traditional image of hidden gang figures operating entirely in secret. In some cases, individuals involved in criminal activity maintained visible business interests, commercial branding, and public-facing lifestyles that appeared respectable from the outside. That context matters in understanding David Stephen and Shaun Brown. Both men were from Hamilton in South Lanarkshire, an area closely connected to Glasgow both commercially and socially. Publicly, they were known through DX Home Improvements, a company that presented itself as a growing and successful business operation. The company's branding became increasingly visible, particularly through its sponsorship relationship with Motherwell Football Club. For many people, that sponsorship created legitimacy immediately. Football sponsorships carry a certain public trust. The branding appeared on club material, around the stadium environment, and alongside one of Scotland's established football institutions. It positioned DX Home Improvements as a successful local business investing visibly within Scottish sport and community culture. And the public image surrounding the company extended far beyond football. Online, both men projected the appearance of financial success and rapid business growth. Instagram posts showed luxury travel, expensive restaurants, Rolex watches, designer clothing, and high-end vehicles including Lamborghinis moving through Scottish streets. Dubai featured regularly in photographs and videos. Business branding appeared constantly alongside images of wealth, confidence, and expansion. The image was carefully modern, young businessman, commercial success, and visible ambition. To many observers, David Stephen and Shaun Brown looked like men who had built wealth quickly through entrepreneurship and branding at a time when social media increasingly rewarded displays of success. And for a period of time, that image appeared convincing. They looked like modern success stories, young businessmen living the dream. But investigators would later claim the wealth came from cocaine trafficking. In many parts of Scotland, the line between legitimate business culture and organized criminal activity has, at times, become difficult to separate completely. Cash-heavy industries, construction work, transport, nightlife, and local business networks often exist within the same social environments where organized trafficking groups operate. Relationships overlap, reputation matters, ND for individuals seeking rapid financial advancement, criminal opportunities can appear far more rewarding than conventional business growth. That environment formed part of the backdrop surrounding David Stephen and Shaun Brown. Their involvement in drug trafficking began before the public success associated with DX home improvements and the lifestyle later presented online. By the end of the 2010s, authorities believed both men had already developed connections within Scotland's cocaine trade and were becoming increasingly active within organised supply networks. The timing proved significant. By 2020, cocaine demand across the United Kingdom remained extremely strong despite widespread COVID-19 lockdown restrictions. While many legitimate sectors slowed during the pandemic, organized drug distribution adapted quickly. Supply routes changed, delivery methods became more flexible, and encrypted communication systems became increasingly important to criminal groups attempting to avoid surveillance while continuing operations across different regions. At the center of that shift was EncroChat. EncroChat was an encrypted phone network used heavily by organized crime groups across Europe. The devices were modified specifically for secure communication, allowing users to exchange messages, photographs, locations, and instructions through systems designed to prevent interception. Users operated under anonymous handles rather than real names, creating an environment where large-scale criminal activity could be discussed openly with a sense of security. For trafficking networks, the appeal was obvious. Drug quantities, delivery schedules, payment arrangements, debt collections, and supplier relationships could all be coordinated digitally without relying on standard mobile networks. The devices became deeply embedded within organized crime because many users believed the encryption made the platform effectively inaccessible to law enforcement. Investigators would later identify David Stephen using the EncroChat handle NarrowNinja, while Shaun Brown allegedly used usernames including SimpleBull and CastleNut. According to the case later presented against them, the conversations connected to those accounts involved detailed discussions surrounding cocaine trafficking operations across Scotland. Behind encrypted usernames, the pair coordinated cocaine purchases, deliveries, adulteration, and cash collection. What emerged from the investigation was not the image of impulsive street-level offending, but something structured and commercially organized. Cocaine movement, financial tracking, and distribution were handled with consistency and coordination over an extended period of time. And as the operation allegedly expanded, so did the visibility surrounding both men. The luxury image became more pronounced online. Watches, vehicles, holidays, restaurants, and business branding appeared regularly across social media. Success was no longer simply private wealth, it became part of public identity. That visibility mattered psychologically. In many organized crime cases, sustained financial success can create a growing sense of insulation from consequences. Public admiration reinforces confidence, legitimate business recognition provides social credibility, expensive lifestyles become easier to justify internally when money continues flowing and external scrutiny appears limited. For a period of time, David Stephen and Shaun Brown appeared increasingly comfortable occupying both worlds simultaneously. While the public image continued expanding, so too did the scale of the cocaine operation operating behind encrypted usernames. Stories like this take real time and research to uncover. If you want more true crime content like this, subscribe and share this video with someone who follows crime stories. You'll be supporting more content like this. By the middle of 2020, the cocaine operation linked to David Stephen and Shaun Brown had expanded into a distribution network moving substantial quantities of drugs across Scotland with increasing speed and organization. The EncroChat messages later recovered from the devices associated with both men documented transactions involving kilogram-level quantities of cocaine over an extended period. Early movements during 2020 involved shipments of 4 to 5 kilograms at a time, quantities already worth hundreds of thousands of pounds once distributed downstream. Over the course of the operation, approximately 125 kilograms of cocaine moved through the network. At wholesale level, the value ran into several millions of pounds. Once diluted and redistributed at street level, the estimated value exceeded £11 million. The operation itself functioned with a level of structure rarely associated with street-level trafficking. Cocaine was sourced in bulk quantities before being moved through trusted intermediaries across different locations in Scotland. Storage properties were used temporarily to reduce exposure. Associates handled transportation and collection duties, allowing movement to continue without constant direct contact between suppliers and distributors. The EncroChat communications revealed detailed discussions surrounding logistics, delivery schedules, quantities, customer demands, debt recovery, and payment tracking. Conversations were often direct and transactional, focused less on violence or intimidation and more on efficiency, timing, and profit margins. One of the most financially important parts of the operation involved adulteration. Before redistribution, cocaine was mixed with cutting agents to increase overall volume. A kilogram purchased at wholesale purity could generate significantly higher returns once processed for street-level distribution. The process allowed profits to increase rapidly without increasing supply at the same rate. The financial systems surrounding the operation were highly organized. Money counting machines were used to process large volumes of cash quickly. Counterfeit detection devices checked banknotes before redistribution or storage. Detailed accounting records tracked quantities, debts, collections, and profit calculations with consistency over time. The operation monitored cash flow carefully, functioning with the internal discipline of a commercial enterprise rather than an improvised criminal network. That business mentality extended beyond the drug operation itself. The money generated through trafficking transformed the public lifestyle surrounding both men. Travel became more frequent and more expensive. Dubai emerged repeatedly as a destination associated with luxury and status. Social media posts documented stays in high-end hotels, designer shopping, expensive restaurants, and first-class international flights. Vehicles became part of the image as well. The Lamborghini Urus associated with David Stephen drew particular attention due to both its visibility and price. Rolex watches, luxury fashion brands, and carefully staged online photographs reinforced an image of rapid financial success. DX Home Improvements continued expanding its public profile at the same time, strengthening the impression that the wealth surrounding both men came from legitimate commercial growth. For some people within their social environment, the image attracted admiration. Young businessmen with visible wealth, football sponsorships, luxury vehicles, An apparent commercial success represented a version of ambition many found appealing. But others viewed it differently. The speed of the wealth attracted suspicion in certain circles. Questions emerged quietly about how such rapid financial expansion had become possible. At the same time, events were unfolding elsewhere in Europe that would fundamentally change the balance between organized crime groups and law enforcement agencies. Across multiple countries, encrypted criminal communication systems had become the focus of an international operation targeting organized trafficking networks operating through platforms like EncroChat. And without many users realizing it, the system they trusted most had already begun collapsing from the inside. The investigation that ultimately closed around David Stephen and Shaun Brown formed part of Operation Venetic, one of the largest organized crime operations ever conducted in Europe. The operation began after law enforcement agencies successfully infiltrated EncroChat, the encrypted communication platform trusted by major trafficking networks across the continent. For years, users of the system believed the devices provided complete protection from surveillance. Messages could be erased remotely. Phones contained security features designed specifically for criminal use. Conversations took place through anonymous usernames rather than real identities. Across Europe, organized crime groups used the platform to coordinate cocaine imports, firearms transactions, money laundering, kidnappings, and large-scale distribution networks. Then investigators gained access. Intelligence gathered through the infiltration was shared between agencies across multiple countries, including Europol, the National Crime Agency in the United Kingdom, and Police Scotland. Almost immediately, investigators began analyzing enormous volumes of encrypted communications linked to organized criminal activity. Within the material connected to David Stephen and Shaun Brown were nearly 12,000 messages exchanged through EncroChat devices. The conversations revealed a highly active trafficking operation functioning almost continuously throughout 2020. Messages discussed kilogram-level cocaine purchases, delivery arrangements, debt recovery, storage locations, adulteration processes, and movement of cash between associates. Quantities, timings, and profit calculations were discussed with remarkable openness because users believed the platform itself was secure. Investigators also recovered photographs sent through the encrypted devices. Images showed compressed cocaine blocks packaged for distribution, large quantities of cash bundled together, luxury items, and equipment associated with processing and handling money. Financial tracking systems documented debts, collections, and payments across different individuals connected to the operation. In some communications, associates were directed to move drugs, collect cash, or arrange transport between locations. The messages became more significant when investigators began linking digital activity to real-world movements. Phone analysis, financial examination, surveillance work, and timeline reconstruction allowed investigators to build a detailed picture of how the operation functioned day-to-day. EncroChat usernames were gradually connected to individuals through travel patterns, photographs, vehicle movements, business activity, and communication habits. And while investigators were reconstructing thousands of encrypted conversations, David Stephen and Shaun Brown continued living publicly visible lives. DX Home Improvements remained publicly associated with football sponsorships and commercial branding. Luxury travel continued. Expensive vehicles continued appearing online. Social media posts projected confidence, wealth, and success. At the same time, investigators were mapping relationships, analyzing data, and identifying associates connected to the cocaine network. By late 2020, investigators had assembled a substantial body of digital and physical evidence connecting encrypted communications to real individuals, real movements, and real drug trafficking activity across Scotland. This is the moment everything changes, and if you've made it this far, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. It helps this channel grow and keep stories like this coming. By late 2025, the investigation had reached its final stage. Investigators had spent months analyzing encrypted communications, reconstructing movements, identifying associates, and connecting digital conversations to real-world activity. The operation had moved beyond intelligence gathering. The focus now shifted to arrests, device seizures, and securing the evidence investigators believed tied the entire network together. On December 23, David Stephen arrived back in Scotland from Dubai on a first-class Emirates flight. Only hours after landing, Stephen was traveling through Cambuslang in a black Lamborghini Urus with Shaun Brown seated in the passenger seat. Surveillance officers were already monitoring the vehicle's movements closely as it traveled through the area late at night. Then the vehicle pulled into a petrol station. Within moments, officers moved in. The arrest happened quickly. Armed with months of digital analysis and operational planning, investigators surrounded the vehicle before detaining both men at the scene. Phones were seized immediately. Officers searched the vehicle while additional searches and evidence recovery operations continued elsewhere. For investigators, the devices themselves were critical. EncroChat had formed the center of the operation, and securing physical phones linked to the network represented a major breakthrough. In total, 6 mobile phones were recovered during the investigation alongside encrypted applications, cash, and extensive digital material later examined as part of the case. Investigators now had the devices they believed connected the pair to years of cocaine trafficking. The arrests marked the sudden collapse of an operation that, for a significant period of time, had functioned openly alongside a highly visible public image. News of the case spread quickly across Scotland. The connection between alleged large-scale cocaine trafficking and a company publicly associated with football sponsorships immediately drew attention. For many people following the story, that contrast became one of the defining aspects of the case. Some expressed disbelief at the scale of the operation. Others questioned how such visible wealth had attracted so little scrutiny for so long. And within business and football circles, the case generated uncomfortable conversations about reputation, legitimacy, and the extent to which organized crime could operate behind polished public identities without immediate suspicion. By the end of December 2025, the public image surrounding David Stephen and Shaun Brown had changed completely. The case against David Stephen and Shaun Brown eventually moved to the High Court in Glasgow, where both men faced charges connected to directing serious organized crime and the large-scale trafficking of cocaine across Scotland. By the time proceedings began, the investigation had already produced an enormous body of digital evidence. EncroChat communications, financial records, recovered devices, photographs, group chats, and transaction histories had allowed prosecutors to reconstruct the operation in considerable detail. Rather than contesting the material presented against them, both men entered guilty pleas. The prosecutors outlined the scale and structure of the operation. The cocaine quantities involved reached approximately 125 kilograms during the 2025 phase alone, with an estimated street value exceeding £11 million. Earlier activity in 2020 involved smaller but still substantial quantities, including the purchase, adulteration, and resale of between 4 and 5 kilograms of cocaine, generating hundreds of thousands of pounds in returns. The prosecution also focused heavily on the organization behind the operation. Detailed financial records had been maintained tracking income and expenditure. Messages showed instructions being issued to associates across different locations. Photographs recovered from encrypted devices included cocaine blocks, bundled cash, and the money counting equipment used to process large amounts of currency. One exchange referenced profits of approximately £230,000 during a single period of operation. And throughout the proceedings, the contrast between the public image and the criminal activity remained impossible to ignore. The men standing in the dock were not unknown figures operating anonymously in isolation. They were businessmen associated publicly with football sponsorships, luxury branding, and visible commercial success. Prosecutors argued that the lifestyle displayed online had been financed through cocaine trafficking carried out over several years. When sentencing both men, Lord Kuby spoke directly about the seriousness of the offences and the wider harm caused by organised cocaine distribution. He described the operation as extensive, highly organised, and financially motivated, noting the nature, extent, and value of the cocaine involved as well as the careful monitoring of income and outgoings within the trafficking network. He also referred to the consequences caused by the circulation of cocaine within communities across Scotland. The court imposed headline sentences of 10 years before reducing them by 1/3 to reflect the guilty pleas entered by both men. David Stephen and Shaun Brown were each sentenced to 6 years and 8 months in prison. Both men were also made subject to serious crime prevention orders lasting 3 years following their eventual release from custody. The orders imposed restrictions designed to limit future involvement in organised criminal activity and allowed continued monitoring after imprisonment. By the end of the proceedings, the image that had once surrounded both men had disappeared completely. The conviction of David Stephen and Shaun Brown formed part of a much wider transformation taking place across organised crime investigations in Europe. Operation Venetic exposed how deeply encrypted communication platforms had become embedded within modern trafficking networks. For years, organised crime groups believed encrypted devices provided complete protection from surveillance. Instead, those same systems eventually became some of the most valuable sources of evidence investigators had ever obtained. The case also revealed something else. Modern organised crime no longer always hides behind secrecy alone. In many cases, it exists alongside legitimate businesses, sponsorship deals, social media branding, and highly visible displays of wealth. The public image becomes part of the protection, success presented so openly that people stop questioning where the money comes from. This case wasn't just about cocaine. It was about image, power, greed, and the illusion of success. And even after the convictions, difficult questions remain. How many organised crime groups still operate behind apparently legitimate businesses? How many encrypted networks remain active despite operations like EncroChat? And did the constant public display of wealth ultimately help bring attention to the operation itself? Do you think justice was served in the case of David Stephen and Shaun Brown? And do investigations like EncroChat prove that organised crime can never remain hidden forever, no matter how sophisticated the technology becomes? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more detailed true crime documentaries covering organised crime, investigations, and major criminal cases from around the world, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload.